In honor of my friend Dolores, the sun will disappear in 30 minutes. Night, a quaint, encroaching skies. I came to this place to honor chill moments with her. Somewhere out there, also stargazing, her own memories of our parting. I see her coming, even now, riding moonbeams in hippie grace. Somewhere she watches evening for inspiration and vision of me, forging words on her behalf. Before lifetime, we promised to find each other at all costs. Fate, we said, would guide reunion and our parting, heaven's throne. Straining to cling to memory as conscience faded. Birth, strange armor of soul. How callous the veil of forgetting. For 30 years I wandered about a gypsy scribe, loose upon garden paradise, trying to shake off the spell of new cycle. Confused scenario, entrenched in Babylon tyranny, doctrine, laws, policed by souls more lost than me. It was 10 years ago that I woke to full remembrance and have been seeking her ever since. Long now have I carried the secret of ancient metaphor, longing for the leisure, the solace of her gentle spaces. I am watching for her even now, anticipating unfolding, which would lead her back to me, patiently awaiting the reward of her eyes. Completion for no other but me. It has been what seems lifetime since I've tasted her in form. Soulmate linked to accomplish me further than the wayward seeker is allowed to go alone. I see her parting trail, lighting candle in her prayerful way. The end of days, moment ripe for the reassembly of saints. Soon all things revealed to knowing. She will remember too in time, if not already. The grander scheme, destiny intermixing lies with the design of fortune. Another sunset claimed by distant trees, tears sheathed in longing. Somewhere she sings songs to tired angels. Summer clouds cradle her chalice form. I wait out the storm, missing her, like breath, the dying man, offering empty words to sway of ocean horizon, hungry for her return. If you don't know, my friend Dolores is now in relationship with Fritz Springmeier, which I'm sure many of you are well aware of his work on the 13 bloodlines of the Illuminati as well as others, and that they are both very knowledgeable individuals, and I can only see good coming from their gathering together as force for what will be this time and this period, and how true for so many being brought together with others of like mind, and how we're sharing in fellowship with those that are truly in the know, and how much of a blessing that is to be able to, because I know so many are in relationships where they are the only ones that have any care or concern for what to me are the most important aspects of life and being. That seeing the kingdom, salvation, eternal inheritance, our return to our first estate, salvation and grace through Christ, direct knowledge of and relationship with Him and the Father and the Holy Spirit, and how all that, for those of you I know listening and myself, there's nothing equal as far as importance, nor worthy of our focus and effort. And so I honor each one of you as I honor Dolores and Fritz, and I thank you for being my friends and for assisting me on this incredible journey of life and remembrance, and how it's such a beautiful thing to be in the know, but also in the know with others who can understand the contemplation, the strange ravings of my mind, and the poetry that I've spent so much time writing, and how it's not been understood, much like the gospel and the word, and how Christ says, I will utter things that have been hidden since the foundations of the world. And my friends and family and people that have known me have seen me grow up and come to be who I am now, that many of them have thought me strange, to say the least, crazy, in euphemism, because I have definitely been different and driven in a stranger capacity. And I know that many of you have ventured along similar paths, that you've hungered for things that others just care nothing about, that you've had a innate desire, an incredible yearning to want to know the Creator and to understand the creation, that you have been driven to seek out, to find understanding, to seek revelation of the ancient mysteries and history and mythology, and you've read stories that most others just care nothing for. And I've been the same way in my life, that I've, since a young age, and I've shared this in chapter 15 of my new book, Skyfall, Angels of Destiny, because many of you have asked about my own journey and the things that have led me to be who I am, and how it is that life and the design of life, the incidents of life, how it is that it shaped my character and led me in path to the knowledge that I've been blessed, the discernment. I've been so just grateful and humbled to have come to hold. And I do consider that many of you to be also, and not saying this in any kind of an arrogant or boastful manner, but I consider you to be wisdom keepers and holders of the secret. And, truth is truth. And when you can see it reflected in others, it's something that does not have to be stated, but it's just it's a way of being, and you can recognize it in a person's character and their work and the way that they are. And again, I'm not saying that I'm one of those as far as counted among the elect or anything of that nature, but I do feel that the Most High has led me in discerning certain aspects of the secrets of the ages, the wisdom of the ages, things that have been contemplated upon. Many people have wanted to purchase or to share in the knowledge that we have been blessed to hold. And I'm so, grateful to the Father and to the Son, to the Most High, and just bowing down to them in thanksgiving for the privilege, what I consider to be privilege of knowing and being able to understand what is the full summation of the whole entirety of history and mythology and all the things, the knowledge that has been pondered upon by so many and has been evasive, has eluded also so many for so many generations and millennia. But it's also my opinion that we are that generation that will see the Spirit being poured out on all flesh, and that we are beneficiaries of such. But that it is also because as seekers we knock and we hunt and we are trying to find more than anything else the knowledge that is contained within the Scriptures, and that the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit would want us to know in order to serve in this time and to be able to aid and help others. And so I'm not going to rant for a very long time because I know that I have a way of doing that, but I do, want to just take a moment to reflect upon the times and our current events, and also in the special blessing of all of us in coming to discernment on what I, again, think is the most relevant things to know as far as being able to help others and to understand what's going on in the world, and to help other seekers, other people that are trying to and wanting to know what's up, because the youth, they're led astray. They've been deceived since they've entered into the illusion of this world. They've been bound and enveloped by this matrix, and they know that something's wrong. They feel with a certainty that something is just not right. And they don't know what exactly that is, or where to go to get answered, or who to turn to for guidance and direction. But it is my opinion that if they truly want to know, and this is not just with the youth or those that are young, because people have spent whole lifetimes on this planet, or most of their lifetimes, and have had no concern for anything of our real reasons for being here, our true role and mission for being embodiment and incarnate into flesh form. But because of the critical nature of the times, the push of the New World Order, the in-your-face disregard by the powers that be for the goodwill of humanity or any of our wishes, they not anything as far as their tyranny, and they are just acting without regard for justice, the rule of law, anything. They believe that they're beyond and unaccountable to anybody or anything. And because of that, it's obvious. It's obvious from the news and what is being reported on, and by the alternative news sources, uh, and these other platforms of news, and that people that give even a little amount of research are coming to very profound truth. And so it's not now difficult to get a grasp of what's going on. It's just being hungry for it, wanting to know differently. And so, anyways, I'm going to go into the topic of the discussion today, which I did a show about this on Revolution Radio, and I know that a lot of you that come and listen on Saturdays, for whatever reason, you're not able to catch the Wednesday evening broadcast. And because YouTube has now banned Revolution Radio, we're not able to archive the shows through them as, reference. And also that there were hundreds, if not thousands of shows from the various different hosts, were also disappeared. And they've never given us a reason. They never, told Nighthawk at Revolution Radio why this was done. There was no warning. It was just done. Also, one other thing, as far as the show last week, after, it ended within 15 minutes, and I had no idea that it was doing so, one of the listeners for Jonathan Kleck, and that also listens to John the Baptist at Tribulation-Now, told me that this same thing happened to Jonathan Kleck a while back. And I don't know how far back that was, or what he was covering as far as the show and the topic. But it seems strange to me that I'm usually pretty certain to set the duration of all my shows for 90 minutes, and that and I made sure with this show too that I kept it open just in case something weird was going to happen. But it is strange to me that did happen. Now, it could absolutely have been just an honest mistake, but who knows? But I'm for sure, anytime I list a show and and set it, that I will make sure, double check that it is for at least a 90-minute duration. And I would do 2 hours, but I usually run out of voice by then unless I have a guest, so that's why I don't for then. Anyway, so I'm going to cover in this show the topic of the Serpent seed line, the giants, the fallen angels, going through the flood, and also some new information that I have just added to what is the second edition, the new release of my fourth book, Lucifer, Father of Cain. And so I'm going to be reading from and sharing commentary from it. And also, I want to just let you know that I had just recently communicated with Stan Johnson again about follow-up and doing further work with him, and that he's going to read through my book, the new edition, which includes a bonus, I think 40 or 50 pages. The text is now 368 pages long. I can't remember exactly. I think it was like 314 before, but there's a lot of new information in the new release, and so I'm going to cover some of that today. And that I think this will be relevant for those that have been wondering about this anyways. And this is a real interesting issue. It's one that a lot of people have pondered upon and wondered about and trying to make sense of, well, why is it that the Most High would, judge the entirety of the world through a flood, and then allow them to survive? How is it and why is it that the seed of the serpent would be allowed to make it through the flood if the entirety of the judgment was for that reason, to wipe out the fallen angels and to wipe out the hybrid bloodline that was born from them? And so those are the kind of things that we're going to talk about today and share introspection on. But it is my opinion, just to set the premise of all the work that we're going to be talking about today, it is my opinion that both the fallen angels, the giants, as well as the seed of the serpent, that all of them would be granted continuance through the flood, but that the flood would be brought on to wipe out their numbers and to kind of reset and to give the seed of the woman an opportunity to survive without being absolutely destroyed and outnumbered. And so the flood reset the space and the arena for both the seed of the woman and the seed of the serpent to grow again, and also that a lot of the technologies and the abominations, the hybrid creatures that had been manifested and brought into being from the experimentation, the interdiction, and also what the Book of Giants calls the miscegenation of both plants and animals, that all things have been corrupted. And even with Noah being pure in his generations, and that everything else, that all of the other seed of the woman or the children of Adam, that they had all strayed. And according to the first book of Adam and Eve and the second book of Adam and Eve, which are part of the forbidden books of the Bible, the Forgotten Books of Eden series, that you can find all of this that I'm talking about now, but that they talk about how all of the children of Adam left their holy place. They all lived on a high mountain, and in the valley below them, the children of Cain lived, and that they were trying to tempt the sons of Adam, the daughters of Adam, to join them, and that they would come together in wild revelries and parties, and that they were taught to play music by Satan and also by the patriarchs of their line, and that they would have these orgies where they would call to the children of Adam to come down and join them, and that many of them did, even after the patriarchs of Adam's line imploring them to not do so and to not go down and live and be with the children of Cain, to not ever to intermix or to marry amongst them, because judgment was coming, and they knew this, but even still they were led astray, and they left their place of habitation, just like the watchers, the 200 watchers during the time of Enoch's father Yared, that left their high and holy place and their place of habitation, and being put into bodies of men, came down and also were led astray by the daughters of Cain. And I'll actually read some of that when I get to that particular point. That might actually be a good place to begin. So Give me just a minute to pull this up. And then we'll go into, how it is that they found continuance through the flood with all three different groups, the fallen angels, the giants, and the seed of the serpent. And for those of you that don't know or have not heard about this aspect of my work, I think you will find it intriguing. And we do have a lot of new listeners, and that are just now discovering some of the things that I've been writing about, or just now have read some of my books. And so it's always good to review this information. All right, speaking about the Watchers, the 200 that, according to the book of Enoch, left their place of habitation. I'm going to post a link in the chat room if you want to read the entirety of the story for yourself. Very interesting. It's from an Ethiopic text called the Kebra Nagas, which means the glory of kings, and this is one of the holy books for the Ethiopic people, along with the Bible that they use, which includes Jasher, the Book of Enoch, Jubilees, and other texts which are excluded from what are the canons of most other areas of the world. And so this particular chapter that I linked in the chat room is chapter 100 of the Kebra Nagas. I'm not going to read the entire thing, just one portion of it. But for those, if you've not read it and you do read it in its entirety, it will tell the story of how the Watchers were jealous of Adam, and how Christ, as the Word, how he was putting up with their railing accusations against Adam, and he told them that if he had made them of the four elements of also dust and not just fire, that they would have strayed even further. And they kept challenging him. They kept saying that no, we would always serve you even if we were in the flesh. We would never be deceived or led astray. And so they kept challenging him and making fun of Adam. And it says in the text that they, were making a laughing stock about him. And so the Most High, the Christ, as the Word, as the angel of the Lord, he said, okay, I'm going to put you into flesh form, but make sure that once I put you into flesh, that you do not fall away and that you do not become deceived, because your judgment will be greater than that of Adam's. And Adam's, of course, was his being kicked out of paradise and put banished to the earth, where he would live and be challenged and tempted by the fallen angels, and that also that he would have to, that him and his wife would birth children. He would have to work the soil, and that there would be the enmity between the devil's children as the tares, and that of the seed of Adam, or the seed of the woman, and his children. And so, this is the part where they're given flesh bodies, and they come down to the earth. It says this: and straightway there were given unto them with his word flesh and blood, and a heart of the children of men. And they were content to leave the height of heaven, and they came down to earth, to the folly of the dancing of the children of Cain, with all their work of the artisan, which they had made in the folly of their fornication. and to their singings which they accompanied with the tambourine, and the flutes, and the pipes, and much shouting, and loud cries of joy, and noisy songs. And their daughters were there, and they enjoyed the orgies without shame, for they scented themselves for the men who pleased them, and they lost the balance in their minds. And the men did not restrain themselves for a moment, but they took to wife from among the women those whom they had chosen, and committed sin with them. For God hath no resting place in the hearts of the arrogant and those who revile, but he abideth in the hearts of the humble and those who are sincere. All right. Okay, just a little bit more. I'm going to skip just a little bit down to it says this. And the daughters of Cain, with whom the angels had companied, conceived, but they were unable to bring forth their children. And they died. And of the children who were in their wombs, some died and some came forth, having split open the bellies of their mothers. They came forth by their navels. And when they were grown up and reached man's estate, they became giants whose height reached unto the clouds. All right, that's all I'm going to read of that. But then it comes to the part about the flood, and the next aspect is about Noah. And so, again, it's my opinion that the giants from Og of Bashan, which we know that it says in Genesis chapter 6 that there were giants in the land before and after the flood of Noah's day. And we'll talk about that here in just a minute. But also that the fallen angels, that they would be present in the land as well. But that because of a prayer of Noah after the flood, 1/10 or 9/10 of the children of the watchers or the fallen angels that were present in the land, they were bound up and they were placed in Dudael, as the book of Enoch speaks about. And also that we'll cover the seed of the serpent and how it was able also to be given continuance. But this continuance, because of the Genesis chapter 3, verse 15, the enmity between the seed of the woman and the seed of the serpent, that continuance would be ongoing for the entirety of the second world age. And that it would be Christ coming into the flesh that would, as it says in the parable of Matthew chapter 13, that it would be then that the tares would be destroyed and burned up, and that the wheat would be saved. And so that's why it's my opinion that the Most High allowed them survival through the flood. And that even though the judgment of the flood was one that was devastating and mostly eradicating, that he allowed all these groups to survive so that at the end, in the end of days, as it says in Matthew 13, which I'll get to at some point as well, that we would have this war between the bloodlines and the lineages, and also that the New World Order and those that serve upon the thrones of the world, that they would be the children of the serpent, and that the evil would be, the duality would be allowed to continue until Christ comes again to set everything straight, and that it would be when he comes again, that every knee shall bow, every tongue confess. And so, and I will put enmity between thee and the woman, and between thy seed and her seed. Okay, so that would be the war. All right, now, how is it that the giants made it through the flood? And I've talked about this, and this is a very strange story. And the reason I think that there's something to it is because of something that I found in the Targum, which I'm going to read that first, and then we'll set this. All right, I'm going to read also some of the stuff that I wrote in my book, because I explain all of this in that text. And this will be page 232 of my fourth book, Lucifer, Father of Cain, the second edition. It says this: having forced the watchers to witness the destruction of their beloved children, the abominable hybrid giant seed line, the archangels bind up the rebel angels and confine them in utter darkness for the time of the end. The planetary deluge was a judgment not against humanity, but specifically to cleanse the earth of this giant presence. Most people have no idea why it was necessary for the Lord to destroy the planet so utterly, and what the new covenant would mean for the family of Noah as they were given the entirety of the earth to replenish. Not every giant was killed with the deluge, as Genesis 6 relates that there were giants in the land prior to and even after the flood. Where and how many giants actually survived is conjecture, yet I have found one story which lends an interesting twist to this tale. And this is from the Targum of Jonathan, which, I did a whole translation of the Aramaic and Palestinian Targums, and you can find that at lulu.com. It has this story as well as all the others that I've sourced in my books, which also speak about the serpent seed in Genesis chapter 4. But it says this, and this is interesting to me. And Og came, who had been spared from the giants that died in the deluge, and had ridden protected upon the top of the ark, and sustained with food by Noah, not being spared through high righteousness, but that the inhabitants of the world might see the power of the Lord, and say, were there not giants who in the first times rebelled against the Lord of the world, and perished from the earth? And so this story is talking about how it is that the Most High allowed Og of Bashan to survive the flood, and that according to its what it's relating, that he rode upon the ark, and that Noah fed him during the time of the deluge, and that once Noah settled, that Og was able to make it through, and that it wasn't because of his righteousness or anything that Og did, but that the Lord allowed him to survive in order to show to those who would also survive the flood that the giants were very much real, and that there would be a remnant of them found in the world after the flood of Noah's day. And what is interesting about this story is that I did more research after I found this passage in the book, in the Targums, in the Aramaic Targums, that I searched it out, and I found another story from the Jewish fairy tales and legends, a collection of Jewish fairy tales and legends published by an Aunt Naomi from 1919, and that this particular book had this story called The Giant and the Flood. And it told this exact same story. It told about how Og had ridden on top of the ark, that Noah had fed him, and that Og had promised to work with Noah to recreate the planet after the destruction of the deluge. But instead, once he made it through, he left Noah. Instead of being a servant and helping Noah, he took off and went, exploring and to do whatever he wanted to do. And we know that Og also became the king of Bashan, and that he went to war against Israel after the flood of Noah's day. And so you can read that story. I'm not going to read it because I've got so much else I need to cover. But it's interesting, very interesting to read, because it's to me a confirming witness to what the Targums say. And for those that don't know what the Targums are, they're translations, Aramaic translations of what was the original Hebrew Torah, and that the English translations of those Aramaic translations include this story. But I'm going to go ahead and continue because I know we're running out of time, and will very quickly. Alright, so let me skip ahead. Alright, now we're going to focus on how it was that the line of Cain survived the flood and was given continuance. This is page 240 of my book, of my fourth book, Lucifer, Father of Cain. It says this: like the giants, the line of Cain as tares would be allowed continuance together with the wheat until the time of the end, when the angels of the Lord as reapers would separate the chaff from the wheat and burn the tares as waste in an all-consuming fire. The line of Adam, according to the book of Jasher, was propagated through Naamah, Noah's wife, the mother of Shem and Japheth, but not Ham. But because both bloodlines are fated by Genesis 3:15 to be in a constant state of war for the entirety of the Second World Age and years of duality, both the giants and the line of Cain were allowed by the Most High to survive the devastating judgment of the flood. The prophecy of Genesis 3:15 would be fulfilled the day that Yeshua was crucified on Golgotha, which Golgotha means Goliath of Gath, and just happens to be the place where David buried the skull of Goliath when he took it as trophy. And when Christ died on cross, he was in fact crushing the skull of the seed of the serpent at the same time that Goliath's skull would be nipping at the heel of our Lord, fulfilling the condition of Genesis 3:15's revelation. And for those that don't know what I'm talking about, the second part of Genesis 15 says, I will put enmity between thee and the woman, and between thy seed and her seed. It shall bruise thy head, and thou shalt bruise his heel. And so when David stunned Goliath with the stone, with the sling, and he ran up to Goliath, used his own sword to cut the head off of Goliath, and that the Philistines surrendered to Israel after that. He took the head of Goliath into Jerusalem, into Israel, and they paraded it around and showed it to the people, and to show how great their victory was. And then afterwards, his head was buried at Golgotha, again, which means Goliath of Gath. And so when Christ was crucified on the cross, this prophecy was fulfilled. Because we know Goliath is one of the hybrid seeds of the serpent, and that Christ was the fulfillment, the seed of the woman, the Savior, Messiah that would come through David's line. All right, continuing. This is the next part that we're going to go in through is from Jasher, chapter 5, which I have the link here. So let me post this in the chat room too, for those of you that are interested in this aspect of the text as well. It says this: Noah, the son of Lamech, refrained from taking a wife in those days to beget children, for he said, surely now God will destroy the earth, wherefore then shall I beget children? And Noah was a just man, he was perfect in his generation, and the Lord chose him to raise up seed from his seed upon the face of the earth. And the Lord said unto Noah, take unto thee a wife and beget children, for I have seen thee righteous before me in this generation, and thou shalt raise up seed, and thy children with thee, in the midst of the earth. And Noah went and took a wife, and he chose Naamah, the daughter of Enoch. And she was 580 years old. And Naamah conceived and bare a son, and he called his name Japheth, saying, God has enlarged me in the earth. And she conceived again and bare a son, and he called his name Shem, saying, God has made me a remnant to raise up seed in the midst of the earth. And Noah was 502 years old when Naamah bare Shem, and the boys grew up and went in the ways of the Lord in all that Methuselah and Noah their father taught them. All right. Now, in the first edition of my book, I had written that it was my opinion that the Naamah mentioned in this particular passage, in this scripture, that this was the Naamah that is the sister of Tubal-Cain, and that was the daughter of Lamech, the blind, who was of Cain's line. And the reason I stated so was because nowhere else is there a Naamah mentioned in Scripture. And so I automatically assumed that it had to have been Naamah of Cain's line, and that this is how the seed of the serpent found continuance through the flood. But then, in revising the second edition, I thought to myself, why would the Most High tell Noah to take a wife of the seed of the serpent of Cain's line when all of the patriarchs, and even Noah's father, Methuselah and Enoch and Japheth, all of them had implored the children of Adam to never intermarry or mix or marry into or with the seed of Cain? It didn't make any sense to me. And so I began to look again at this particular chapter. And then it's my opinion that the Most High led me to better understand this particular topic. And so I'm going to present it to you as I've learned it now. And so what's important about this passage from the book of Jasher, chapter 5, verse 12 through 18, is that it says Naamah, that Noah went and took a wife, and he chose Naamah, the daughter of Enoch. Now, those of you that are familiar with the line of Cain, you know that Enoch was the firstborn son of Cain. and that he was, the first generation separated from Cain, who was the patriarch of the whole line. And so that's the first clue. The next clue is that Nama is the mother of Shem and Japheth. But nowhere in this chapter is Ham mentioned as being the son of Nama. So these two things are important. Now, keep this in mind as I read what will be the next part of this book. It says this. It's important to note that in Jasher chapter 5, there is an Enoch listed in both the lineages of Adam and Cain, and that attempting to determine which Enoch and whether there is a Nama inferred of the line of Adam can be very confusing. In fact, it is only with the publication of this edition that I've changed stance on this issue. I now believe that the Enoch spoken about in this quote had to have been the Enoch of Adam's line. The reason I say this is because Nama is cited as the daughter of Enoch. And if this were the Enoch of Cain's line, this Nama would be very much older than Noah. And as the Enoch born to Cain was his firstborn son, and 9 generations separate from the time and life of Noah, there is a Nama listed in Cain's lineage, but she is the sister of Tubal-Cain, 5 generations apart from Enoch, and is the daughter of Lamech and the great-great-granddaughter of Enoch. Another thing of importance is that the first 10 generations of Adam's line are repeatedly told by the Most High, his angels, and their fathers to never ever marry or to mix with the line of Cain, the murderer of Abel, as I have covered previously in chapter 11 on the enmity between the seed lines. Now, the next key to this puzzle is cited in the last 2 passages of the Jasher 5 quote concerning Shem and Japheth, sons of the marriage between Noah and Nama. It mentions them as the children of promise, as the priesthood passes through Shem's line. Another interesting thing of note, nowhere is Ham referenced as the son of Nama and Noah. My friend Dr. Joy Pugh states in the 3rd book of her new Beguiled series that Ham may have been born of another mother and that he may have mated with her when he saw the drunkenness of his father. This would also explain why such behavior is venerated among the lineage of Canaan as reason for kings of his line to marry their mothers as spouse, as in the case of Nimrod and Semiramis. It's possible that Cain's line found continuance through Noah's second wife, and that something may have happened to Nama in the time between the birth of Shem and Japheth, born when Noah was 592 years old, and the time when Noah and family entered the ark, as Noah was then 600 years old. In Jasher 6, verse 13, it says, "And at the end of 7 days, in the 600th year of the life of Noah, the waters of the flood were upon the earth." And so, here's my speculation, continuing with the book. Maybe Noah married a second wife, and Ham was born from that coupling. A lot of ifs, I know, but I do believe there is absolutely something to Ham not being listed in Jasher as the son of Noah and Nama, and that the two sons whom were born of that marriage are cited as, and the boys grew up and went in the ways of the Lord, in all that Methuselah and Noah their father taught them. Also, I believe Noah cursed Canaan because he was the fourth-born son of Ham, destined to become the usurper of Noah's other sons' land, continuing the war of Genesis 3:15 post-deluge. It would be Nimrod of Canaan's line whom would render the entirety of the known world under what was the first post-Atlantean attempt to establish a new world order. Nimrod also revitalizes the knowledge and religion of the Watchers, reinstituting human sacrifice as part of their ritual worship. All right, so let me restate this real quick. So, according to the text, Nama is the daughter of Enoch. And we know that Enoch was right before Methuselah, who's the father of Noah. And so they would be somewhere near in age if this is the Enoch of Adam's line and not the Enoch of Cain's line. And the fact that this particular Nama is the mother of both Shem and Japheth, which we know them to be more righteous than Ham, and that Ham's line were the ones that got involved with the fallen angels again post-flood. And so it's my opinion, as Dr. Joyce states in her third book of the Beguiled series, and if for those of you that have not read it or not have studied or read any of her three books from this new series, the third one, in my opinion, is of most interest because it focuses on the seed of the serpent and what happened in the garden, the metaphor, the symbology of the enmity between the seed of the woman and the seed of the serpent. And so if you're interested in this as topic, Dr. Joy's book is, in my opinion, like Lucifer, father of Cain, my fourth book, one of the few books that covers this in such great detail as to what happened, the garden parable, how it ties into the New World Order, the end of days, from beginning to end, as her new series, Beguiled, is from Eden to Armageddon, that we cover in fullness the same kind of thing. And so if you're interested, if you've benefited from the research that I've done in Lucifer, father of Cain, that I would recommend reading her third book of the Beguiled series. And that particular text, I've read it, it focuses on this particular topic as discussion. All right. Continuing. So, now we're going to go into how it is that Ham, what the nakedness of the Father means, because so many people have asked me about this as well. And most, when they read this from, I believe it's Genesis chapter 9, they assume this to be a homosexual act, and that Ham had sex with his father while his father was drunk and passed out, and that when he woke up, he knew what had been done to him. And so we're going to explain this story and why it is that the lineage of Canaan, the children of Canaan, why Noah cursed them, and how it is that they became the ones that got involved again with the fallen angels. A passage from Jubilees says this: And Ham his father, and Cush and Mizraim his brothers, said unto him, Thou hast settled in a land which is not thine, and which did not fall to us by lot. Do not do so, for if thou doest do so, thou and thy sons will fall in the land and be accursed through sedition. For by sedition ye have settled, and by sedition will thy children fall, and thou shalt be rooted out forever. This is talking to the children of Canaan, which we know that Nimrod was born from Canaan through Ham. All right. Before going into this page 242 of the text, before going into why Canaan was cursed by Noah, I want to make mention of something that I found in the Targums, which I believe totally reinforces the statements I have made about the two separate and distinguishable bloodlines. From chapter 5 of the Targums, it says this: And Adam lived 130 years and begat Sheth, who had the likeness of his image and of his similitude. For before had Hava, which is Eve, born Cain, who was not like to him, and Abel was killed by his hand. And Cain was cast out, neither is his seed genealogized in the book of the genealogy of Adam, but afterwards there was born one like him, and he called his name Sheth. Now, if you want to know more about why it is that chapter 4 begins with, and the passage, and Adam knew his wife Eve, semicolon, and that Cain was conceived, it's all because the semicolon differentiates thought, and that it's saying that Adam knowing his wife Eve is what led to the birth of Abel. But that Cain, because he was born from the serpent beguiling Eve, that his lineage would begin there in Genesis chapter 4, and Adam's would begin with Seth, because Abel was killed by his half-brother in Genesis chapter 5. Now, I did a whole series on this with the Prophecy Club, and I explain it in great detail there. You can find that on YouTube under Prophecy Club, Lucifer, Father of Cain. All right, continuing, because I know we're going to run out of time. All right. Skipping to the nakedness of the father. Continuing with the curse of Canaan, the fourth-born son of Ham, as a result of his having looked upon the nakedness of his father. What does this mean, the nakedness of the father? Some say that seeing his father's nakedness meant that Ham either had performed a homosexual act with Noah while he was in a drunken state, and that upon awakening Noah knew what his son had done to him, or that Ham had taken to bed his father's second wife, and that Canaan was the progeny of their unholy fornication. For years I thought that the story of Genesis chapter 9 to be describing a veiled homosexual encounter between Ham and his father Noah, as nowhere in the story was there any mention of Noah's wife. I had assumed that Noah knew what his son had done to him, because upon awakening he felt the pain of such intrusion. Besides, homosexuality was something rampant among the giants and the children of Cain, as portrayed by the story of Sodom and Gomorrah. However, I changed my outlook when Mike, a fellow member of FallenAngels.tv, posted a blog on our site about the nakedness of the father and this specific issue. All right. In Leviticus chapter 18, verse 8, it says, "The nakedness of thy father's wife shall not thou not uncover. It is thy father's nakedness." All right, it says this also. Mike was claiming that this passage in Leviticus was alluding to what the nakedness of the father actually meant, equating the nakedness of the father to actually mean the nakedness of thy father's wife, meaning that Ham must have seen his father's wife and mother, possibly drunk, passed out naked within the tent, and having gone in to lay with her, produced the offspring Canaan, who then became the recipient of the post-flood curses of Noah. And because Yahweh had already blessed he, his wife, his sons, and his sons' wives, meaning Noah, Noah curses Canaan instead of Ham, ascribing his line to be servants unto his son Shem. And to prove this story, I'm going to read, well, in Genesis chapter 9, it says this, but I'm going to read this particular story from the Targums to give you more information. All right, Genesis chapter 9 says this. And Noah began to be a husbandman, and he planted a vineyard. And he drank of the wine and was drunken, and he was uncovered within his tent. And Ham, the father of Canaan, the emphasis, Ham, the father of Canaan. Now, it doesn't emphasize it much more than that in this story. But in the Targums, it's greatly emphasized to show you that Ham is the father of Canaan. And Ham, the father of Canaan, saw the nakedness of his father, and told his two brethren without. And Shem and Japheth took a garment, laid it upon both their shoulders, and went backward, covered the nakedness of their father, and their faces were backward, and they saw not their father's nakedness. And Noah awoke from his wine, and knew what his younger son had done unto him. And he said, Cursed be Canaan, a servant of servants shall he be unto his brethren. And he said, Blessed be the Lord God of Shem, and Canaan shall be his servant. All right. Now, the Targums give a little more light to the story and seem to expound emphasis on Ham as being the father of Canaan, and that his having seen the nakedness of his father consequently resulted in the birth of Canaan, something that could not have happened if the story of Genesis 9 was in fact an homosexual act and not one of impropriety where Ham sleeps with his mother. And so, Genesis chapter 9, as in the Targums, says this. And the sons of Noah who went forth from the ark were Shem, Shem, and Japheth. And Shem is the father of Canaan. These are the three sons of Noah, and from them they were spread abroad to dwell in all the earth. And Noah began to be a man working in the earth. And he found a vine, which the river had brought away from the Garden of Eden. And he planted it in a vineyard, and it flourished in a day, and its grapes became ripe. And he pressed them out, and he drank of the wine, and was drunken. And he made himself naked in the midst of his tent. And Shem, the father of Canaan, beheld the nakedness of his father, and showed to his brethren without. And Shem and Japheth took a mantle, and bare upon the shoulders of each, and went backward, and covered the nakedness of their father. And their faces were turned back, and the nakedness of their father they did not behold. And Noah awoke from his wine, and knew by the relation of a dream what had been done to him by Shem, his son, who was inferior in worth on the account that he had not begotten a fourth son. And he said, Accursed is Canaan, who is his fourth son. A serving servant shall he be to his brethren. And he said, Blessed be the Lord, the God of Shem, whose work is righteous. And therefore shall Canaan be servant unto him. The Lord shall beautify the borders of Japheth, and his sons shall be proselytized, and dwell in the schools of Shem. and Canaan shall be a servant to them. And Noah lived after the deluge 350 years, and all the days of Noah were 950 years, and he died. The Targum of Jonathan, Genesis chapter 9. And so you see how it is that from this reference, over and over, 3 times in this passage of the Targums, Genesis chapter 9, it says that Canaan is the son of Ham, and that the relation of his having seen the nakedness of his father was the result of Canaan being born as the fourth-born son of Ham. And so that could only come about if, in fact, the nakedness of the father is, as we speculated from Leviticus chapter 18, verse 8, that seeing the nakedness of the father is in reference to the father's wife. And so that Noah, when he woke up, as it states in the Targum, that he knew from a dream that Ham had slept with his wife and his mother, Ham's mother, Noah's wife. And that Canaan would be born from him, and that this is also the reason why, you know, as in the case of Nimrod and Semiramis, as well as in the case of pharaohs marrying their sisters or their mothers, their daughters, that this kind of thing was passed down and ritualized in the line of Canaan, that this is the first occurrence. This is the thing that bred this particular behavior. And so one more passage from our book, chapter, page 245. The covenant Noah established among his sons when he made them promise to not encroach upon each other's land would be broken by Ham's incestuous son Canaan. And with his birth, Satan had again a seed line to corrupt and propagate evil through. The Lord could have, if he had wanted to, completely eradicated the earth of Satan's seed, yet because of the enmity between the bloodlines, Cain's lineage would have continuance until Yeshua returns for the harvest of souls. King Og of Bashan, a remnant giant, would also be preserved for reign post-flood, as he would be slated to mix with the peoples living in Canaan, siring the Philistine Goliath Saph and his other brothers. Satan's children were preserved through the hybrid giant and Canaanite lines in order for Yahweh to establish the perfect scenario to glorify his name when freeing his people from the bondage and subjection of Egypt, and then guiding the descendants of Abraham's covenant into obtaining the promised land overrun by giant tribes. And so, there you have the story. I want to read one final quote. This is from the Kebra Nagas, chapter 4. Now Noah was a righteous man. He feared God and kept the righteousness and the law which his father had declared unto him. Now Noah was the 10th generation from Adam, and he kept in remembrance and did what was good, and he preserved his body from fornication, and he admonished his children, bidding them not to mingle with the children of Cain, the arrogant tyrant, the divider of the kingdom, who walked in the counsel of the devil, who maketh evil to flourish. And he taught them everything that God hated: pride, boastfulness of speech, self-adulation, calumniation, false accusation, and the swearing of false oaths. And beside these things, in the wickedness of their uncleanness, which was unlawful and against rule, man wrought pollution with man, and woman worked with woman, the abominable thing. And again, after the flood, the devil, our enemy, did not cease from his hostility against the children of Noah, but stirred up Canaan, the son of Ham, and he became the violent tyrant or the usurper who rent the kingdom from the children of Shem. Now they had divided the earth among them, and Noah had made them swear by the name of his God that they would not encroach upon each other's boundaries. But Canaan was the one that broke the covenant and began the war again between the seed of the woman and the seed of the serpent post-flood. And so there you have it. The story of the fallen angels, the giants, and the seed of the serpent, both through the flood, post-flood, and before. And also, I know, because, me mentioning that story from the Targum about how Og had written on top of the ark, that, some people have made fun of me about that, saying, oh, Og, the first surfer, or whatever. But, I'm not making this up. This is something that you can find reference to. And, as the Bible says, out of the mouths of 2 or 3 witnesses shall the truth be established. And that particular passage that I found in the Targums about Og, that there's also a story from the Jewish fairy tales that is linked to this particular passage as well, this particular story. And because I have time, I'm going to read just a little bit of that. First, I'm going to read again the Targumic quote. And Og came, who had been spared from the giants that died in the deluge, had ridden protected upon the top of the ark, and sustained with food by Noah, not being spared through his righteousness, but that the inhabitants of the world might see the power of the Lord and say, were there not giants who in the first times rebelled against the Lord of the world and perished from the earth? All right, this is from that story, the giant and the flood. I'll read a little bit of this and then we'll end with song. Just before the world was drowned, all the animals gathered in front of the ark, and Father Noah carefully inspected them. All ye that lie down shall enter and be saved from the deluge that is about to destroy the world. He said, ye that stand cannot enter. Then the various creatures began to march forward into the ark. Father Noah watched them closely. He seemed troubled. I wonder, he said to himself, how I shall obtain a unicorn, and how I shall get it into the ark. I can bring thee a unicorn, Father Noah, he heard in a voice of thunder, and turning around, he saw the giant Og. But thou must agree to save me too from the flood. Begone, cried Noah, thou art a demon, not a human being. I can have no dealings with thee. Pity me, whined the giant. See how my figure is shrinking? Once I was so tall that I could drink water from the clouds and toast fish at the sun. I fear not that I shall be drowned, but that all the food will be destroyed, and that I shall perish of hunger. Noah, however, only smiled, but he grew serious again when Og brought a unicorn. It was as big as a mountain, although the giant said it was the smallest he could find. It lay down in front of the ark, and Noah saw by that action that he must save it. For some time he was puzzled what to do, but at last a bright idea struck him. He attached the huge beast to the ark by a rope and fastened to its horn so that it could swim alongside and be fed. Og seated himself on a mountain near at hand and watched the rain pouring down. Faster and faster it fell in torrents until the rivers overflowed, and the waters began to rise rapidly on the land and sweep all things away. Father Noah stood gloomily before the door of the ark until the water reached his neck, and then it swept him inside. The door closed with a bang, and the ark rose gallantly on the flood and began to move along. The unicorn swam alongside, and it passed Og, and the giant jumped onto its back. See, Father Noah, with a huge chuckle, you will have to save me after all. I will snatch all the food you put through the window for the unicorn. Noah saw that it was useless to argue with Og, who might indeed sink the ark with his tremendous strength. I will make a bargain with thee, he shouted from a window. I will feed thee, but thou must promise to be a servant to my descendants. Og was very hungry, so he accepted the conditions and devoured his first breakfast. I'll read just a little bit more. The rain continued to fall in great big sheets that shut out the light of day inside the ark. However, all was bright and cheerful, for Noah had collected the most precious of the stones of the earth and had used them for the windows. Their radiance illuminated the whole of the 3 stories in the ark. Some of the animals were troublesome, and Noah got no sleep at all. I'm going to actually stop there. And so, anyways, whether you believe that Og was spared from the flood because of riding on top of the ark, it's just conjecture, and it's not something that we can know for certainty. But as I said earlier, it's found within the Targums, and it's also part of the fables and the history of the fairy tales of Jewish lore going back thousands of years. And so it's my opinion that there's got to be something to it. Because otherwise, who would just make up a fairy tale of it, and how would it get inserted into the Aramaic translation of the Hebrew Torah, so that when the Aramaic translations were translated into English, that all of a sudden, it was there, and it came out. And so it is what it is, but I hope that you were blessed by this show, and I hope that you'll join me next Wednesday as I come to you on Revolution Radio. Just remember, I'm not able to save the archives anymore, and so I don't have access to them, and I can't post links for them. In order to catch the shows, you'll have to catch them live, which we're on every 8 to 10 p.m. on Wednesday. Studio B, just enter a chat handle and enter the chat room, and you'll catch. You'll have to hit the play on Studio B, because we have 2 different studios, Studio A and Studio B. Anyways, God bless all. I hope to see you next week, and I hope that the Most High blesses all of you and your children, and that you can continue on in your seeking.